Advanced Training, ASG Cloud Factory, Understand and Install, WEB-SECURE-LOGON, Linux Frontend, Part 1. Learners' objectives. For this enhanced training of WEB-SECURE-LOGON for CloudCockpit and the CLOUDSTORE components, we'll be covering the following items. What does the ASG WEB-SECURE-LOGON, WSL? The big picture of WSL, where we talk about architecture, components, usage, and other pieces around the technology. The front end, back end, and the communication framework. Requirements for this installation. And of course, in the end, the installation itself. WEB-SECURE-LOGON is a component of the CloudCockpit, and it works closely with CloudCockpit Workspace. Basically, it enables us to access applications, even if they are called from an unsecure environment, like the internet, and creating a tunnel between you and the infrastructure. We also provide certificates, support, radios, CloudCockpit one-time password, SMS, and of course Windows Live ID and SAML to specific applications that you want to integrate, such as Google Apps, Office 365, Salesforce.com, and others. The logon via username and password, of course, can be also done via regular login ID. But if you want to increase the security, WEB-SECURE-LOGON is a good way to do that. And the architecture is done in 3 different layers: the internet layer, the DMZ layer, and the Cloud Factory layer, where we have Cockpit, the application farm, the WSL backend, the SQL server, Radius, and the Active Directory. So when the user starts using the technology, he always connects using a secure channel. We validate the user in the WSL backend, and that can be done through the Active Directory, Radius, or the cache information in the SQL server. With that validated, user get access to the corporate network and access CloudCockpit. But it also can access the application farm. In this case, could be Citrix, AppMirror, or other applications. And the validation will also happen through WSL. So user can launch an application, and in this case could be using Citrix to access the environment. And the installation process will be done in 5 different steps: the WSL frontend, the WSL backend, publishing Cockpit and Store. We will do the URL in Cockpit, testing to make sure logon and login works properly, and finally testing. So how do we implement it? Well, we need to understand 2 pieces. We need a front-end server and a back-end server. On the front end, you can choose between Windows and Linux. In the environment that we are building here, we're going to use Linux for that matter, using CentOS. And we need specific components: PHP, OpenSSL, Mode VSL handler, which is provided by us, and the certificates for internal and external networks. The backend, it requires Windows Server, either 2008 or 2012. And we will need a database for a single sign-on, and also one specific for WEB-SECURE-LOGON. And collation is important to be Latin 1_general. Don't worry, our environment already covers that. Now we're going to install the WSL front-end server. I just installed a Linux CentOS VM in my environment, and I already used a minimal installation, which can be followed in the WSL documentation provided by ASG. So let's do the prep work first to set up the components for IP tables and the rules for the firewalls. So the first step we need to install IP table services and net tools. So here is the first command that needs to be executed. We're downloading the packages. And we'll be confirming that we need to just update this particular package. Yes. Once completed, now let's make the changes to disable the firewall service and start using IP tables. So this is the first command. Here's the second command to enable the IP tables. And the third command needed to enable IP tables for IPv6, if you have in your environment IPv6. And finally, we needed to disable or stop the firewall service and start the IP table services for IPv4 and IPv6. So let's do for IPv4 and let's do for IPv6. The next piece that we need to do, we use the fconfig-a command, which I have in the second screen on the right, where I have my interface names. This is important to add into the IP tables configuration. So let's edit that. So we need to go to the vi command, sysconfig, IP tables. Okay, right below here, port 22 or any other place. Let's add a few lines. And let's insert the commands, the ports for external interface and internal interface. So let's do first the external interface, where we need to remove this external interface name and replace with the correct name. Okay, so my external interface is this one. So we put ENO 33554960. And we need to do the same thing for the internal interface, but a different port in this case, which is the port 3345. So let's copy the command, insert, paste. Let's remove and make sure it is in the same line. EN 0167 7736. Oh, there's an extra 7 over here. And let's make sure there's a space over here. All right. Let's save this file. And let's restart the IP table services. And make sure we properly configure the IP tables. Keep in mind, -L, -V, -N, they are required for this IP testing. And here we can see the ports that we want to check. So, okay, that's great. We don't have any problems here. Everything seems to be good to go. And remember, port 443 is here and 3345 is here as well. The next step, it is installing and updating your Linux packages. So let's use the command yum update. Okay, we need to update a few packages. I will pause the screen recording because this process might take a couple of minutes, and I'll come back when it's completed. Looks like the packages are being installed properly. And now that all of the packages are updated, we can enable the extra packages for Enterprise Linux. Let's install the RPM package for the EPL packages. So we do RPM -I, and here's the URL that we need to use. Oops, we need to make a correction over here, just removing the wget. Okay, great. And now we can install the required packages. So we need to install the web server. We need to install the PHP, the micrib for PHP, MBS string, PHP SOAP, and the mod SSL. So let's do that. That might take a few minutes to happen. So I'll pause the video until it's completed. Here we can see those packages are selected and they will be installed. So I'll confirm the installation process. I'll confirm the key as well. And the packages are installed. For the Apache server configuration, we have to edit a few files. So the first one that we will edit, it's the conf file for HTTPD. Okay, oops. Audio. For the Apache server preparation, we have to edit a few files. So the first one that we will edit is the HTTPD conf file. And there we will deactivate listen port 80. So let's search for listen. And we will comment this particular line. Save the file. And now we're going to change the proxy configuration or the reverse proxy configuration file. So we have to go to a different folder. And the file that be edited is the 00-proxy.conf. And here's the complete path for us to edit. So let's go there. And we need to check if proxy module is loaded. So let's search for proxy. And it's enabled. So please do not make any comments or delete the line. And now we have to edit the SSL configuration. In this particular file is going to be listening the external interface. So let's edit now the SSL file. So let's look for listen. Okay, I will remove this line or comment. And I will add listen. And I will add the IP address that we have on the external interface, 192.168.2.20 on port 443. Just in case, I'll save it. And now we need to look into the virtual host part. So let's look into virtual host. Okay, so here we can add the virtual host for our server. So what we need to do here is let's replace this default to the IP address we just added. And we will add the server name information as follows. Let's add the server name. In this case, I will use my cfdemo.com on port 443. And let's add the rewrite settings as well, or rules. This is also described in the documentation. Okay, now we can save the file. So now let's create the SSL internal file. I'll use a copy command just to copy our SSL to SSL internal. To avoid comments or empty lines, let's use the cat command here to make sure the file is clean. And now we can edit the SSL internal file. Okay, so first of all, let's comment this line and change it to be the internal one. So listen 192 168.317, port 3345. And now we need to change the virtual host as well. So in this case, let's comment them as well and create 2 new entries. Virtual host 192.168.317. Let's specify the port one more time, 3345. And the server name will be WSL.CFDemo.local. Listening on port 3345. Let's remove the extra line and save it. Okay, the next step here is we need to remove the rewrite engine. And right below the server name, let's specify the new root directory where we're going to have the HTML in there. So this is very simple to do. It's actually in the documentation. It's right here. We can save it. And now let's make sure the HTML internal folder is created. So we can use the mk command with this string. At this stage, we need to export a couple of certificates between the domain controller or the certificate authority to our WSL environment. So the first step, what we need to do is we need to go to the IIS. Under Administrator, we select the server certificates, and here we select the certificate authority certificate. What we do next, we double click Details, and then we use Copy to File. Next, we would like to export with the private key. Next, and we will set a password, and you can choose any password as you want. Click Next, and here we'll create a new file name. Because we're using the app server for our certificates, let's save the files in our app server. Under Install, here in Certificates, I will create a certificate called mycfdemo.pfx. Save, Next, and Finish. And the second step is we go to the Microsoft Management Console. So I will right click, Run MMC. We'll click on File, Add and Remove Snap-in. Let's use Certificates. Let's use Computer Account. Next, Finish. Okay. Let's expand now. Go to Trusted Root Certificate Authorities, Certificates, and here are our certificates. We can just click, right-click, and export. And here we'll use the DER encoded binary. Let's browse and use myca.certificate for that matter. Save it, and that completes the process to create the certificates. Now that we have the certificates created, I transfer them to the server here app desktop just to make sure it's easy to transfer to the server. And I'm using WinSCP for that. And I just connected using root. What I'll do just to keep it simple, I'll create a new folder called Certificates. And I'm copying these 2 files there. Okay. Then we'll go back to our shell. So let's go to my root certificates folder. Here they are. And now we need to convert the PFX file to a file that Apache can see it. So we're going to use OpenSSL pkcs12 -in. Here we're going to use our certificate. So I will just call my certificate PFX. CLC and I'll call this a CRT file. I'll type the password I just created. Okay, let's verify if the file is here. Yep, it is. Now we're going to do open SSL. We're going to do the same process here to extract the keys. Okay, so now let's create the key for the front-end server. So I've used again the same command that we find in the documentation. Okay, and we'll do the second command here to create the CSR file. -alt WSL_front_end.mydomain.local.csr. Okay, we need to put the country. So it will be US. State, I'll put Florida. Naples, for example. Organization name, I will put Allen Systems Group. Unit will be IT. Common name, so the name of the host name. So we can just verify here. It is vsl.cf_demo.local. No email required, no challenge password required, no option, and the certificate now is created. Here's the CSR file that we just created. So let's just verify the certificate that we just created using the cat command. And here we see the key created. So for the next part, we just need to copy this content. Make sure you copy the begin and end part. And let's go to our certificate authority. So in this case, let me just open the browser. Okay, opening the browser. Let's go to the certificate authority. In my domain controller. Use the administrator account. We use request a certificate, advanced options, submit using the key. We use this particular key. And this has to be a web server. We'll click submit, yes, and then we will be downloading the certificate. Keep in mind we are going to use the DER as well. So click on download certificate, and let's save as for now in our install folder. I will just use the name CertNew for now. With the certificate saved, this certificate cannot be used at this point in the Linux environment. We need to convert it to our Apache format. So let's go to this particular website, sslhopper.com. And let's convert the certificate. Let's browse. From DER to PEM format. Convert the certificate. Now it's converted to CRT format. Let's save as. And now I will call it WSL front end .mydomain.local.csr. And finally, we can copy this particular file back to our Linux virtual machine. So let's copy the file. And that completes this particular cycle to create the certificates. Now that we have all of the certificates installed in our Linux virtual machine, we need to configure in the Apache server. So the first step we need to do, we need to copy my cfdemo certificate.crt to etc pki tls certs. We'll do the same thing for the key, but in a different folder, which is the pki tls private. And we need to copy as well the internal certificate for WSL. So the certificate first. And we'll do the same thing for the key and place it in the private folder as well. To make them effective in the Apache server, we need to edit two files. Let's edit first the SSL file. So let's do vi etc httpd confd ssl.conf, and let's look for SSL cert. Okay, here we go. I already added the file a little while ago just to make sure the configuration was tested, but this is what you need to add in your file for the certificate file, and the same for the key file. As you can see, I also commented the original configuration file just in case we need it. So let's save it, and let's now edit the SSL in file. And we have to look two different lines. Like I did before, I already pre-populated that for us. We have here the certificate file and also the TLS file. Let's save it as well. Let's check if the configuration is done properly. So there's a command that we can do. It's called Apache -t. No errors came back. And now let's restart the Apache server. No errors, it means that Apache is up and running. So let's do one more test. ps-ef pipe grep httpd. Okay, we can see the service, it's running. Now we need to provide the CA root certificate for the Apache server. The process is fairly simple. We copy our CRT file, my CA CRT, to our certificates folder, and we just need to change the link of the CA bundle certificate for that matter. Now we have to install and configure the WSL frontend components. From the setup media, let's uncompress the CentOS 7 packages and transfer them to our Linux virtual machine. I created an install folder just for us to easily find the files. So let's go back to my emulator, and now let's do the rpm ---- import Vision app cpg gpg-key. It's there. And now let's do the yum local install. Let's do the first package. Okay, the updates are completed, and let's confirm the install very shortly. Let's confirm. And let's do the second component. So it's again yum local install WSL component. In this case, it's the PHP component. Accept, and installation is completed. And now we have to configure the last step here, the Cloud Cockpit workspace access. So back here in the console, we have to edit one more file in the HTTPD application, the Apache, which is the WSL handler. So let's do vi etc httpd confd WSL handler. Okay, and now we have, there's a couple of examples here, and I prepared one already for us here that it's, for our demo environment, which is in this particular file. So we do the proxy match, everything that is cockpit will be routed to this particular server. It's the web server where we installed cockpit and the proxy reverse setting as well. So we copy, we paste it, and we save the file.